Bí quyết giảm ngay 5 kg sau 1 tháng, không cần nhịn ăn, không cần tập luyện khắc nghiệt, cực nhọc. Chỉ cần 1 đến 2 gói Nanufit mỗi ngày, bạn sẽ có ngay một bữa ăn hoàn hảo, đầy đủ dinh dưỡng, ít calo, hỗ trợ đốt cháy mỡ thừa và giảm cân nhanh chóng. Sản phẩm còn giúp giảm cảm giác thèm ăn, bổ sung năng lượng suốt cả ngày dài và đồng thời hạn chế lượng calo hấp thụ vào cơ thể. Tại vì sao bạn bị tăng cân liên tục? Vì sao bạn không thể giảm cân dù đã thử rất nhiều cách khác nhau? Nguyên nhân chính là mất cân bằng hormone và chế độ ăn thiếu cân bằng. Khi mà hormone ghrelin gây đói nó tăng cao thì bạn sẽ liên tục thèm ăn và nạp calo quá mức, tích tụ mỡ thừa. Và nếu như cơ thể không sản xuất đủ hormone leptin, cái hormone tạo cảm giác no, thì bạn sẽ luôn cảm thấy đói và ăn mãi không thấy no. Các phương pháp giảm cân sai cách như là nhịn ăn hay là thuốc giảm cân cấp tốc thì nó chỉ mang lại cái hiệu quả tạm thời và đồng thời gây nguy hiểm cho sức khỏe như là gì ạ? Suy nhược cơ thể, tổn thương gan, thận, dạ dày và dễ tăng cân trở lại sau khi chúng ta ngừng sử dụng. Nhưng mà khi bạn sử dụng Nanufit thì hoàn toàn khác, bởi vì sản phẩm này sở hữu một công thức dinh dưỡng vượt trội, được nghiên cứu kỹ lưỡng bởi đội ngũ chuyên gia hàng đầu hiện nay. Và Nanufit là sản phẩm vừa giúp bổ sung dinh dưỡng lại vừa giúp giảm cân đầu tiên và duy nhất trên thị trường. Sẽ áp dụng cái cơ chế là tổng hợp các hoạt chất DNF10 và giúp phân giải, triệt tiêu mỡ thừa tận gốc. Và đặc biệt là tại các vùng khó giảm như là mỡ bụng dưới này, đùi này, mông. Và đặc biệt thì hoạt chất này còn có khả năng kích thích enzyme phân giải chất béo ở trong cơ thể. Và kết hợp cùng với chiết xuất trà xanh, cacao và lượng lớn chất xơ tự nhiên sẽ mang đến cho cơ chế giảm cân hiệu quả, giúp triệt tiêu mỡ thừa nhanh chóng nhưng mà vẫn cung cấp đầy đủ năng lượng và dinh dưỡng cho cơ thể. Và cách sử dụng thì rất là đơn giản thôi. Đó, chỉ cần chưa đến 2 phút đồng hồ là bạn đã có một bữa ăn thơm ngon, đủ chất và ít calo rồi, giúp bạn no lâu mà không bị tích mỡ. Đấy, ngay bây giờ thì tôi sẽ pha luôn ở đây cho các bạn xem nha. Với sản phẩm này thì nó không hề ngọt, đó, không hề chứa đường, nên là kể cả những người bị tiểu đường này hay là huyết áp cao thì vẫn có thể yên tâm sử dụng nha. Đó, chị nào mà muốn uống lỏng này thì mình có thể là pha tầm khoảng là 180ml giúp tôi. Đó, còn nếu mà mình muốn uống đặc hơn thì mình có thể là pha là 150ml nhá. Đó, cái sản phẩm này thì mình có thể dùng để thay thế bữa ăn sáng này, bữa ăn trưa này hoặc là bữa ăn tối. Đó, trong bất kỳ cái thời điểm nào trong ngày mình cũng có thể dùng được luôn. Cái lượng calo của nó rất là thấp, chỉ chưa đến 100 calo thôi, nhưng mà vẫn đảm bảo được dinh dưỡng và năng lượng để mọi người có thể hoạt động cả ngày mà không thấy mệt mỏi nha. Đây, rất là nhanh, tôi đang pha đây là cái vị trà xanh nhá. Rất là pha rất là nhanh, mình chuẩn bị tầm khoảng 150 đến 180ml nước ấm. Đó, đổ vào khuấy tan là có thể sử dụng. Mới bóc ra thôi nhá, mà đã rất là thơm rồi. Nhưng mà cái vị thơm của nó là cái vị thơm nó rất là thanh, nó dễ chịu chứ nó không hề có cái cảm giác là bị ngấy hay là bị ngán đâu. Đấy, ngay bây giờ là sẽ uống thử luôn cho các chị em xem nha. Rất là dễ uống. Cái vị của nó sẽ rất là vừa phải, không bị ngọt quá nhá, không ngán, không ngấy một chút nào luôn. Nên cực kỳ là dễ sử dụng cho mọi đối tượng. Đó, một cái sản phẩm mà nó vừa hỗ trợ giảm cân nhanh chóng này, bền vững, không tăng lại khi mà ngưng sử dụng. Dù bạn có bận rộn lịch trình này, công việc thường xuyên phải di chuyển cũng có thể dễ dàng sử dụng một cách tiện lợi và nhanh chóng nhất. Sản phẩm thì được sản xuất trên dây chuyền hiện đại, đạt chuẩn quốc tế GMP, được Bộ Y tế cấp phép ban hành và đáp ứng cái tiêu chuẩn nhập khẩu quốc tế. Vậy nên nó cực kỳ an toàn với mọi đối tượng sử dụng. Đó, và sản phẩm này thì còn được Thạc sĩ bác sĩ Lê Thị Hải, nguyên Giám đốc Viện Dinh dưỡng Quốc gia khuyên dùng và chứng nhận về hiệu quả chất lượng. Và với một sự bảo chứng này thì chắc hẳn là các chị em cũng đã có thể hoàn toàn yên tâm để mà sử dụng Nanufit Calo ít Siết Dáng chuẩn một cách hiệu quả rồi. Và nếu như bạn muốn giảm cân một cách an toàn thì tuyệt đối đừng tin vào những loại thuốc giảm cân cấp tốc đó. Hãy tìm một giải pháp giảm cân khoa học, hiệu quả, đã được chứng nhận, không gây hại cho sức khỏe. Và giải pháp an toàn, bền vững được rất nhiều chuyên gia dinh dưỡng khuyên dùng hiện nay, đó chính là sản phẩm Nanufit. Đây không chỉ là một loại thuốc giảm cân mà nó còn là một bữa ăn thay thế ít calo, giàu dinh dưỡng, giúp bạn không chỉ giảm cân bền vững mà còn tăng cường sức khỏe và hệ miễn dịch cho cơ thể. Và duy nhất trong hôm nay, Nanufit đang có chương trình ưu đãi cực kỳ hấp dẫn khi mà mua 3 tặng 1, mua 5 tặng 2 với giá cực kỳ hời các anh chị nha. Vậy nên là các anh chị mình đang có nhu cầu giảm cân, giảm mỡ thì mình nhanh tay đặt hàng ngay để nhận được những cái ưu đãi lớn nhất từ nhãn hàng nha. Và đặc biệt khi mà các anh chị mua hàng Nanufit thì đội ngũ dược sĩ của nhãn hàng sẽ liên tục theo sát và sẵn lòng hỗ trợ tư vấn trong suốt quá trình mình sử dụng sản phẩm. Mình có vấn đề gì thắc mắc, có thể hỏi ngay và luôn, cực kỳ là uy tín đúng không cả nhà ơi? Cả nhà hãy nhắn tin hoặc để lại số điện thoại ngay cho em để em lên đơn cho mình ngay và luôn nha các anh chị ơi.
Next, we untangle the roots carefully using chopsticks. Using scissors, we prune long roots. We can prune up to 1/3 of the roots if needed. Now we add some soil in the pot. Place the tree slightly off-center in the pot, keeping in mind its front and the most beautiful angle for displaying it. Once you are satisfied with the placement, attach the tree to the pot using the wires we prepared earlier. Now we add more soil. Use chopsticks to make sure all air pockets are filled with soil. We have pruned, wired, and repotted the tree. So what's next? First, we water the tree. We will wait with fertilizing for a month and make sure that the wires are not damaging the branches after a few months.
The ficus tree, one of the most popular bonsai tree species for beginners, mostly because you are able to keep this tree indoors. It's not ideal, it's a subtropical tree species, so it likes high humidity, and that's something that's very hard to have in a living room. But if you provide good light and water it correctly, the tree will be fine. And in most areas you can place it outdoors from spring, summer and perhaps fall as well. And so you would only keep it indoors in winter, if you can. These trees are sold all over the place, quite cheap. And it's not a hard tree to keep alive. What it does do, it grows long shoots everywhere if you fertilize it and provide lots of light. So you will have to maintain your tree. And this video is all about the maintenance for ficus bonsai. Fit in this small pot. So the orientation of the pot will be like that. And the other potential front is like this. And actually I think this might be the optimal front, also because the top of the tree is coming in your way and there's two branches that kind of hug you, which looks really nice. So I think when we repot the tree, this is going to be the front. So let's see what pot will be able to fit it in. But before we repot, I want to style the tree a little bit. So the way to do that, also for the ficus tree that you might have at home, is to start with pruning. And this is always a bit scary, especially for beginners, because you don't know exactly what design you're after. But the easiest way to get started is by pruning away the things that you know for sure you won't be able to use. So let's take this shoot as an example. It's a long shoot. There's no way that I will use this section of the tree because the tree will be smaller. So I'm just going to prune, let's say, right here. Not too much, I can prune more later. And I'm just going through the tree like that, just cutting these long shoots off. some basic pruning. And just by this basic pruning, you start to understand the branch structure of your tree a little bit. So a few more cuts and let's study the tree now. So just by pruning these few branches, the shape of the tree is already much better. I'll continue pruning and also wire the tree a little bit. So some of these branches should come down a bit, and we'll take it from there. If you are reluctant to use wire, you can also just simply only prune the tree, that's fine. But today I'll wire a few of these branches just to be able to set them in position.
Deciding on the design of a bonsai isn't always easy, especially when a tree is as full and overgrown as this plant. Try to apply the pruning guidelines we just mentioned to your own trees. And if you are interested to learn more about these techniques, consider enrolling in one of our online bonsai courses. Here, expert teachers explain the relevant techniques, and you can ask them questions. For a free lesson, go to bonsaiempire.com/courses.
Alright, so finished pruning the tree, and like I said, I started with taking off those longer shoots, and then I started taking a bit more off. But simply reducing the length of these shoots already brings back a really nice shape of the canopy. So actually you could keep the tree like this. It doesn't really need wire. I do think it needs a smaller pot because the tree, especially now that I pruned it, the pot is too large for this size of tree. So we'll repot next, but like I said, I like to add a bit of wire to a few of these branches to set them in position a little bit better. So I'm talking about these two branches, bring them down, and a few other branches as well, but not too much.
layers, which takes us round about 5 to 6 days. It's winter now, so it will take round about 6 days because the epoxy takes longer to cure. And this is a massive tip I want to share with you guys in casting the next layer. As you can see, the layer I'm busy tapping now is tacky. It's like a toffee, but it's still not a liquid form. And this is absolutely the best method we found in casting the next layer of epoxy. Instead of waiting for that layer to dry and sand it and then cast your next layer, we will wait for the perfect timing once the layer you just casted becomes tacky that you cast your next layer. That bond between the two layers are absolutely the best bond you will ever get. So there's something I want to share with you guys in something we've been working extremely hard on. And that is by compiling a complete epoxy online masterclass. We get so much queries internationally of all the methods we're using. People keeps on asking us sanding methods, polishing methods, everything regarding how to build a epoxy table successfully. So we took the liberty in designing and filming a full 3-hour online course which you can watch in your own time, exactly how we manufacture and design epoxy tables. In this class we are literally taking you by the hand and showing you from start to finish every single thing you need to know to build a epoxy table successfully. The course is 3 hours long. I am going to leave a link down in the description of this video where you can go to our website and where you can purchase this online epoxy masterclass. I think there's more than 1,000 people that already purchased the class, and we have so much positive feedback on people that started small companies. People that were so scared of working with epoxy that are so comfortable with working epoxy now. People that's making small chopping boards. People that's DIYists and hobbyists that were so afraid of working with epoxy, and now they are so comfortable with working with epoxy. Like I mentioned, this will literally show you every single thing in detail, how we manufacture and design all our tables. Check this ad out and you can decide for yourself if you want to purchase it or not.
We've been building epoxy tables for many years now, and we are finally going to share all our methods and techniques with you. My name is Greg, and I am going to show you how to build the perfect epoxy table. I'm going to show you all the tools you need, exactly how to use them, and show you some tips and tricks down the line. Everyone thinks you need to cast your second layer of epoxy once your first layer has set. That's not true. You need to cast your second layer of epoxy once your first layer has become tacky. This masterclass has been designed for all woodworkers, from your beginner all the way up to your experts. Click on this video or in the description down below for more information.
So the prices for the course will go up by next month, so you guys must probably have another week left. Then the course will double in price, so make sure you go and check it out before the prices go up. Continuing with the video, like I mentioned before, we are using a deep casting epoxy, which technically we can cast the whole table in one go, but what we found is that casting in layers, we are still using a deep casting epoxy, but casting the table over the course of say 5 to 6 days, casting a total amount of, depending on the thickness of the slab, we will cast around about five layers we will cast, and we found that this reduces the amount of bubbles we have. remember, we don't seal our live edges, so you will always have small micro bubbles on the edge of your slab. This is why we cast in layers, because deep casting epoxy obviously takes longer to cure, and this helps us to remove 98% of all our air bubbles. Now, taking the table to one of our suppliers' shop, which he has a massive CNC machine. Now, we are obviously not in a position to purchase a CNC machine because it's truly really expensive. So for a small cost, we just take it to our supplier. It takes us around about 2 hours to flatten our table both sides, and this is the most critical step in making sure that you have a flat surface between your wood and your epoxy. Now, the way we previously done it, I think we only done it once or twice way at the start when we started manufacturing epoxy tables, is we would have done it manually with a router sled. Now, there's nothing wrong with it, but we found that it's so messy and it takes us just too much time in getting our surface flat, and that's why we don't waste our time anymore. We just pay the small fee, and doing it on a CNC machine is just way faster, and it saves us so much time in completing this project. Having the table back in my shop, we are going to start sanding with our Festool Rotex machine in the Rotex setting. Now, the Rotex setting is like a belt sander setting, but it's not as aggressive as a belt sander. This step is to remove all the CNC lines the CNC machine made. You will see on the table there's so many lines, and the 80 grit sandpaper is going to remove all those lines. This step is quite critical for the next step that's going to follow in our build.
One of the most popular bonsai tree species for beginners, mostly because you are able to keep this tree indoors. It's not ideal, it's a subtropical tree species, so it likes high humidity, and that's something that's very hard to have in a living room. But if you provide good light and water it correctly, the tree will be fine. And in most areas you can place it outdoors from spring, summer and perhaps fall as well. And so you would only keep it indoors in winter, if you can. These trees are sold all over the place, quite cheap. And it's not a hard tree to keep alive. What it does do, it grows long shoots everywhere if you fertilize it and provide lots of light. So you will have to maintain your tree. And this video is all about the maintenance for ficus bonsai. So before we talk about the maintenance, I want to explain to you how this tree came to be. This is an imported tree from China, where they are grown by the 100,000.
I can guarantee you that most probably by the near future, there will always be smaller things in our shop we will change just to make life easier for us and to make the design and manufacturing of building epoxy tables easier for us. And you guys do want to stick around till around about the middle part of this video, because there's a really important announcement we want to share with all the hobbyists, the DIYers, and for all the people that wants to start a company but don't know where to start. And you guys do want to stick around till the end to see how this masterpiece came out. Now, starting this week's project off, we are going to build something unique, something special, something the client asked us that they don't want a traditional epoxy river table. They wanted something different, something funky. And that's where the design part of this project was really tricky. I think we took, normally when we design epoxy tables, we will take around about half an hour to an hour to design the layout. We will send it to the client and they were happy with it. With this specific project, we took almost, I would say, estimate around about 3 hours just to design this table. And I honestly do have to say that this table came out absolutely stunning. The specific wood species we are using for this project is called Matumi, because we always get queries internationally for all the tables we build. People always want to know what wood species we are using. So it's called Matumi, and unfortunately for all the international viewers, this is only locally sourced from South Africa. It comes more from Tsenin world up all the way into Botswana, going up all the way into Africa. It's one of the most popular wood species to build epoxy tables in our country. And I honestly do have to say the design came out magnificent. Also, another tip I want to share with you guys, what I'm busy doing now, is something we normally don't record on video. And before you're going to place your slabs into the mold, always make sure to airbrush them to remove all the dust particles from your slab. Also remember to wipe your wood off, because there will always be smaller dust particles that you need to remove before you're going to cast your epoxy. Now we're just busy placing all our pieces of wood into our mold we just built. And I know I'm most probably going to get some critics for this step, but we found in removing all the dust particles before we're going to cast our epoxy, we just use a leaf blower, because there's enormous amount of air that comes out that goes into all the small little cracks and holes that will remove the last dust particles. Now I'm just busy calculating the amount of epoxy we're going to use, and this was a really tricky calculation because there was a lot of bends, twists and turns, height differences, but at the end it's not that difficult of a calculation to make. It's really simple if you don't complicate things too much. It's a simple calculation of length times width times height, and I will go more into detail on this in the center of this video, where I'm going to do some more explanation on a epoxy masterclass we are presenting for people that wants to start building epoxy tables. Now I'm just busy mixing my part A resin and my part B hardener together, and it's quite critical to get your ratios absolutely 100%. You don't want a mistake at this part. Another tip I want to share with you guys is in mixing your colors. The specific client asked for a transparent blue color, and it's quite critical in each batch of epoxy you're mixing that you add the exact same amount of drops in to have consistent color C. Now I'm just busy testing out our new tool in our shop, and that is a vacuum chamber. And I honestly do have to say that this changed the way we build tables. This method is literally removing all the air bubbles from your epoxy. It was quite expensive, but definitely an investment for our company. Now, busy casting the epoxy, you will see as we cast more layers after one another, you will see the colors will become darker on the blue. And another tip I want to share with you guys, in when you're going to pour your epoxy, pour it on a ridge, on an edge of your table. This will prevent more air bubbles from coming out. And another tip I want to share with you guys is that when you're casting your epoxy, cast it slowly. And as you can see, my live edges on my slabs are not sealed. Now, the way we previously done it in the past is we would seal our live edges with epoxy. We will wait for it to dry. Then we will come and scuff it and sand it up. So when we're going to cast our epoxy, that the new epoxy we're casting will bond to the edge of our slab. But we stopped using that method because if you think about it logically, we want the epoxy to penetrate into the wood. And thus is why we are using this method I'm currently using. We are using a deep casting epoxy, which means I can literally cast the full depth of this table in one go. But we still prefer to cast our epoxy in.
So I'll show the wiring in a detail shot later, but one of the essential rules, so to say, of wiring is that it really helps to wire two branches of more or less the same thickness with one piece of wire. So that means that I'll coil the wire once or twice around the trunk, and then one end of the wire goes on this branch and the other end of the wire goes on this branch. And that will really stabilize the wire and helps me to set these branches in the exact position that I like them to be in. So having wired these two long branches next up with relatively thick wire, then I can wire perhaps a few of the twigs attached to those branches with smaller wire. But the rule of trying to wire two branches with one piece of wire remains the same. Only if I run out of options, I can use a wire just for one piece of branch, but then I'll have to coil it a few times around another thicker branch or the trunk. So like I said, I'll add a bit of wire now, and then the next step is repotting it, placing it with the right front in a smaller pot.
The wire applied here is anodized aluminum bonsai wire. It's available in most bonsai stores, and this is the wire we use for wiring most deciduous tree species. We do wire junipers and pine trees with copper wire sometimes, just because it's a little bit stronger and more stiff, but for the softer tissue of a ficus like this, we would definitely use aluminum wire. In this shot you can see that we coil the wire around the branch, and then in the next shot you'll see that we'll wire with that same piece of wire the other branch. But at the trunk we coil the wire at least once around the trunk for stability of the wire. Before continuing, I'd like to show you our brand new Bonsai Care app. The app provides tree species specific information for all your trees, and it can set smart reminders to optimize the care for your bonsai. It is available for free in the app stores. So nearly finished wiring the tree, and this is about as far as I would go for now. You could wire all the branches and the tree would look a little bit better, but I think that the most important branches we wired this way. So the wire will stay on the tree for probably about 6 months, depending a little bit on how fast it grows. So
big fields of ficus trees that grow maybe 10 feet tall. And the reason they let them grow so quickly and so tall is to thicken up the trunk. So they add some movement in the trunk, and then they have a long shoot into the sky, and the more it grows, the faster the trunk gains a bit of curve. At some point, so maybe 2 or 3 years in the development of the tree, they cut off this long shoot, so you see that right here. And then they spend about a year or so to develop a few of the branches here, and they ship it off in containers to Europe, to the United States, etc. So that's how they speed up the development of this tree by having that long shoot, and that keeps the cost down. So these kind of trees aren't very expensive. If you have one of these trees, you will probably, if you don't prune it very often, you will have these long shoots, and you have to work with that. So you have to prune your tree every now and then. It is fall right now. That's an excellent time to do drastic maintenance. So today I can prune, I can wire, I can even put it in a new pot. But throughout the year, so in summer for example, I would still prune it, but I wouldn't repot or wire at the same time. So fall is a good time, and early spring is a good time to do that more drastic maintenance. So like I said, today we'll repot, prune and wire. And since we're repotting, we can also discuss the front of the tree. So right now it's planted in a rectangular pot. So that means that this is the front, or this is the front. But actually I think the tree looks a little better if you place it at an angle. So this is one option for the front. So changing it around so the pot would be like this. So actually the pots that I have in mind are a little smaller. So this could be one. And I hope actually it will fit in this small pot. So the orientation of the pot will be like that. And the other potential front is like this. And actually I think this might be the optimal front. Also because the top of the tree is coming in your way, and there's 2 branches that kind of hug you, which looks really nice. So I think when we repot the tree, this is going to be the front. So let's see what pot will be able to fit it in. But before we repot, I want to style the tree a little bit. So the way to do that, also for the ficus tree that you might have at home, is to start with pruning. And this is always a bit scary, especially for beginners, because you don't know exactly what design you're after. But the easiest way to get started is by pruning away the things that you know for sure you won't be able to use. So let's take this shoot as an example. It's a long shoot. There's no way that I will use this section of the tree because the tree will be smaller. So I'm just going to prune, let's say, right here. Not too much, I can prune more later. And I'm just going through the tree like that, just cutting these long shoots off. Some basic pruning. And just by this basic pruning, you start to understand the branch structure of your tree a little bit. So a few more cuts and let's study the tree now. So just by pruning these few branches, the shape of the tree is already much better. I'll continue pruning and also wire the tree a little bit. So some of these branches should come down a bit and we'll take it from there. If you are reluctant to use wire, you can also just simply only prune the tree, that's fine. But today I'll wire a few of these branches just to be able to set them in position.
Deciding on the design of a bonsai isn't always easy, especially when a tree is as full and overgrown as this plant. Try to apply the pruning guidelines we just mentioned to your own trees. And if you are interested to learn more about these techniques, consider enrolling in one of our online bonsai courses. Here, expert teachers explain the relevant techniques, and you can ask them questions. For a free lesson, go to bonsaiempire.com/courses.
Alright, so finished pruning the tree, and like I said, I started with taking off those longer shoots and then I started taking a bit more off. But simply reducing the length of these shoots already brings back a really nice shape of the canopy. So actually you could keep the tree like this. It doesn't really need wire. I do think it needs a smaller pot because the tree, especially now that I pruned it, the pot is too large for this size of tree. So we'll repot next, but like I said, I like to add a bit of wire to a few of these branches to set them in position a little bit better. So I'm talking about these two branches, bringing them down, and a few other branches as well, but not too much. Also, and a bit of water just to increase the local humidity a little bit. If you do all that, your ficus will be very happy and healthy. And the next time I probably need to prune this is in maybe 2 or 3 months from now, so there will be some new shoots and I'd simply prune them back to this silhouette. So long story short, what we did today was a big maintenance, a lot of things we did at the same time, but the next 12 months it's all about a little bit of pruning and proper bonsai care, watering, placement and fertilizing. That's it.
Learn how to create your own bonsai trees by enrolling in one of our online bonsai courses. We explain techniques like pruning, wiring and repotting, and you can ask questions to the teachers. For the curriculums and free lessons, go to bonsaiempire.com/courses.
The best way to start your journey into bonsai art is to buy a starter kit and grow and train a bonsai tree yourself. This tree is a juniper plant which is about 4 years old. After pruning, wiring and repotting, this was the result. Now let's start from the beginning, by removing the top layer of soil to see where the first roots appear. We carefully lift the tree from its pot and remove loose soil using chopsticks. Now that we can see where the main roots appear, we can decide on the best front of the tree. We also take into consideration the shape and taper of the trunk and the position of the main branches. The next step is to carefully remove any dead branches, dangling growth, or dead foliage using scissors. This basic cleaning will reveal the structure of the plant, helping us in deciding how to design the tree. The next step is pruning. To create a more compact design, we remove the top of the tree using a concave cutter. This branch will be bent upwards later on and function as the new apex. Pruning is considered the most difficult part of creating a bonsai tree. Try to follow our lead, or consider enrolling in our Getting Started with Bonsai course, where we explain the process of bonsai design in great detail. For the curriculum and a free lesson, go to bonsaiempire.com/courses. You can safely prune up to 1/3 of your tree's foliage. At this point, we are finished pruning the tree and work starts on wiring the branches. We start with wiring the main trunk, which is still flexible enough to bend. Carefully wrap the wire around the trunk at an angle of 45 degrees, holding the wire with one hand and the trunk with the other. Now we carefully bend the trunk to compact the tree, as well as to create a less formal appearance. Next, we wire the main branches, starting with the lower branches and slowly working our way up to the apex. Try to wire 2 branches with 1 piece of wire. Between these 2 branches, make sure to wrap the wire at least once around the trunk for stability. Hold the branch with one hand and the wire with the other. Reposition your fingers after each twist to protect the branch. The wire should be thick enough to hold the branch in the desired shape once we bend it. This is the branch that will function as the apex of the tree. Remaining wire can be cut off using a wire cutter. Once you finish wiring the branches, you can start shaping them, moving your way up the trunk towards the apex of the tree. Next, we prepare the bonsai pot before we start repotting. A bonsai pot should have at least one drainage hole. We attach a mesh to cover this hole with a short piece of wire. We also prepare 2 long wires, which will be used later to attach the tree to the pot.
Instead of timing 6 months, I'll just keep a close eye out on the branches of the tree and remove the wire on branches before it starts to cut into the bark. The next step then is repotting the tree. So the tree was planted in a mostly organic soil mix with a bit of pumice, it seems, which is a good mix, especially for a tree that you still wish to develop. It will hold more water and more nutrients. And the soil mix we'll use for the tree, repotting it today, will still hold a little bit of organic matter, but not as much as right here. So for finished bonsai trees, I always recommend to use our standard soil mix of akadama, pumice and lava rock in equal parts, which is a completely inorganic soil mix that holds far less water. But like I said, for a tree like this that I still wish to develop, and a tree that I keep indoors as well, for me it just helps that it holds a little bit more water. So that's why I add a bit of organic matter. Next, we prepare the pot by covering the drainage holes with a mesh. We also attach 2 long wires, which will be used to anchor the tree to the pot firmly. As you can see here, we do prune the roots as well. Not too much, maximum about half of the root mass, and make sure that you end up with enough of those finer, smaller roots, because those are very important for the tree to sustain its health. The next step then is that we add a first layer of soil into the pot, which is the completely inorganic mix. This will help drain out water of the pot. So then we place the tree on top of that first layer, and we use the long wires prepared earlier to attach the tree to the pot. The reason we wiggle the tree a little bit is that we want to make sure that there's no air pockets between the roots.
All right, we finished repotting and also the pruning and wiring. So quite a big difference with the tree before and after. But really the bones of the tree, the main structure was already there. The trunk with a nice movement, main branches. So basically we just brought back the shape of the tree and refined it by adding some wire around these branches. The repotting, I think, really had a big impact. The tree now is really in sync with the pot. It's even on the small side, I think, but as you can see, we used a bit of organic soil just to make sure that the tree has enough moisture when we place it indoors. But it fit the tree, it fit the pot very well. So this video is also about the care and the maintenance of a ficus bonsai. So what we just showed was about pruning and a bit of wiring and the repotting as well. All these techniques we have separate videos on as well, so if you want to have more information on repotting, make sure to look up that video. We also have a video on ficus bonsai care with all the tips for how to care for a ficus. But I can tell you now what my care for this tree will be in the next months. So it's November right now, so we're moving into winter. So this tree will be kept indoors at a very bright position. So as much light as I can give it, this tree will get. So it's got a big window which is south facing, so maximum sun. And I'm making sure that the soil never dries out completely. So usually that means that I probably water it maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but it really depends. So don't water on a routine, but water on observation, meaning that you observe the soil, and just before it starts to dry out, you water it. And if you water it, do so very generously. So what I do, I actually bring it into my kitchen sink, water it a lot, let it drip out all the water, and then I place it back in front of the window. So I talked about placement, about watering. The other thing then is fertilizing. So I do fertilize this tree in winter, but a little bit less than I would do in the rest of the year when the tree is growing stronger. And I fertilize using a liquid standard fertilizer. Other than that, the tree doesn't need much. So good watering, a lot of sun, and as much humidity as I can give it. So I'll place it on a humidity tray that's filled with pebbles.